Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now by Amapola Hansberger in Orlando, Florida. She's the founder and president of Legal Immigrants for America. In Washington, D.C., we have Ivan Garcia-Hidalgo. He's the president of the Hispanic Leadership Council. In Wilmington, Delaware is Arturo Viscarra. He's an activist and immigration attorney. And with me here in the studio is our very own TRT World correspondent, Randolph Nogel. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Amapola Hansberger, can I begin with you first, ma'am? Tell me why you're not a big fan of the migrant caravan.
Well, I represent the voice of millions of legal immigrants from those countries: Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Venezuela. Well, Venezuela is South America. And we are for the rule of law. It is a lot harder to do what they are doing than it is to go to the American embassy to file forms and subject themselves to the vetting process.
So Arturo Viscarra, the argument is, okay, you might be facing persecution, poverty, violence. Go to the U.S. Embassy and file legal papers and go through the process. Why get on the road on a major caravan to make it to the U.S.? Tell me why you disagree with that.
I mean, there isn't a process for people to apply at the U.S. embassies. I mean, even recently there was a Central American minors program where they were allowing a very limited amount of minors that have parents with status in the United States to apply from the embassies, and that program was cut, was abolished by President Trump. There is no process for people to do that. And on top of that, applying for asylum at the port of entry is legal process. This is people following the one and only option that they have if they want to try to come to the United States. This is the only one. There's a story about one person who actually was a legal permanent resident, a green card holder who lost his green card, and the U.S. Embassy, according to him, told him, hey, the best thing that you can do is get to the United States border and apply for entry there, and an immigration judge will later look at you.
Ivan Garcia-Hidalgo. Okay, Ivan, so we have the president who tweeted that there were criminals and unknown Middle Easterners, with the implication that just being Middle Eastern makes you sort of suspicious. Was that a bad idea from the president? Did he make a big mistake in saying that by assuming criminality to a bunch of people he doesn't know anything about?
Well, no, I think that was very accurate. We know that there are MS-13 and criminal element in there. We know this is coordinated and organized by cartels and other organizations. Nobody just, maybe one person or maybe three can say let's go hit the border, but not 17,000 where the number is approximately today. This is a well-funded, well-coordinated assault and invasion on our country. We know for a fact Jimmy Morales, the Guatemalan president, said he has captured 100 ISIS terrorists in his country. So we know that there's criminal element and probably terrorist element.
Hold on.
We know from
you've
the
even got
previous
ISIS
administration, from when Chavez was president,
but
that he was giving out.
Okay, I'm interested because I have to jump in here. You've mentioned the word ISIS as well. Is there any evidence whatsoever that there's a terrorist or criminal element within this crowd? Do you have any evidence?
Well, I think there isn't any evidence to show otherwise right now, is there? Because we don't know who these people are. Okay. That's the problem.
Okay.
That's the problem with illegal immigration, a caravan like this, and legal immigration. If they were looking for asylum, if they're true asylum seekers, they would go to a consulate, an embassy, file for asylum, go through a regular process. But that's not what they're doing. They're attacking the border. 17,000 at a time. They're crashing the border. We saw what happened with the Mexican border. The Mexican were tried to put a wall, tried to put a barrier, and they went right through it. Okay. And that's exactly what their intention is. Okay. They want to assault the border. They want to raid the country and try and get in.
Crashing the border, raiding the country. Amapola, you're nodding in agreement here. So Amapola, is that what you think as well, that these people need to prove that they are not criminals and terrorists rather than the other way around?
And even if they don't prove it, look at their body language. I'm sorry, but burning the United States of America's flag is an act of terror. It's an act of aggression against our country, and it cannot be permitted.
Who did that?
They did, the caravan. They burned the flag, and then they said, we're coming to get you, in those, some words like that, to Mr. Trump. I'm sorry, he's a duly elected president of the United States, and we have to respect them. And if they are foreigners, aliens, and they don't respect them when they are in their own land, what are they going to do when they are in America?
Okay, and it's interesting.
Sorry,
okay.
That to me is an act of aggression.
Okay, act of aggression, crashing into the border, invading, burning the flags, we're coming for you. And it's been good to hear that perspective from both Amapola and from Ivan. Our correspondent was recently in Central America. Randy, you spoke to a lot of these people who are trying to either get to Mexico or get to the United States or wherever they can find a better life. Is it accurate at all? You've spoken to them. Is it accurate at all that some of them might have been paid by others for political agendas? Tell me, what was it like? What were these people about? Who were they?
Well, I was on the Mexico-Guatemala border to see who was coming across, and obviously my testimony here is anecdotal at best, but the people that I met were incredibly desperate. I interviewed one young woman who was living in San Miguel, Salvador. She had to flee because she was caught up in basically what amounts to systemic rape. They basically take a family member hostage and then force young women, oftentimes under the age of 18, to sleep with one of the MS-13 gang members. So this is very problematic for these people. I don't know that they necessarily have the resources or even the information to go through the formal process. She was very afraid when we were interviewing her. She was looking around. And just to respond to one of your other guests, what she mentioned, this image of the American flag burning, I just recently read an article that broke down a lot of the misinformation that's been flowing around, images of this caravan traveling on buses and on trains, images of skin rashes saying they're bringing in diseases, and this image of the American flag. And a lot of these images have been sourced to other times and places.
Amapola, is it possible that you're wrong? Is it possible that even if this might have occurred, maybe one person might have done it, but you're assuming and you're maybe ascribing the guilt to an entire group of people, some of which include people such as those that Randy met, women who have survived rape, for example, and are trying to get to the US for a better life?
Well, as for the argument that desperation justifies aggression, it is wrong. If we look at all of the Central American countries, including the one I was born in, Nicaragua, they have, there are disasters. There is a disaster, and they're all disasters. And the only way that we can fix that is by asking the United Nations to come to those nations and try to restore law and order and protect the citizens. I feel for them, I really do. I'm Central American and I have compassion. But for us to absorb the entire population of Central America is not practical. It's impossible.
Arturo, I've given you a few minutes to absorb, Arturo, a lot of the arguments from the other guests. Come and respond now. I know you're chomping at the bit.
Well, I mean, it's obvious that they're both also listening to a lot of fake news, a lot of right-wing propaganda, a lot of things that are, circulated on the internet that aren't even true, and then they don't, care to follow up on that. I would say, secondly, these countries, I'm from El Salvador, and I was with the previous caravan that traveled through parts of Mexico in April. And I'd say it's very obvious that these people are just desperate people. They're fleeing regimes, that are fleeing governments that, for example, Honduras, it's a dictatorship that the United States has supported. Since the 2009 military coup, the United States is responsible for the chaos that's created in these countries. And then we can go back to the Monroe Doctrine. We can go back to just the invasions of Nicaragua, of Honduras, the banana wars of the 1900s, and then just even more recently, the 1980s, the interventions, the dirty wars of the supporting dictatorships in Central America. The United States owes these countries reparations.
Okay, but be that as it may, Arturo, let me come in here. Be that as it may.
I'm sorry.
Don't the others have a point, Arturo, that the U.S. is a country with laws and that there's a border and that you can close your border and not have somebody come in unless they have a legal right to come in, no more, no less?
Applying for asylum at the border, at the port of entry, is legal. This shouldn't be a conversation. This isn't an argument. This is the only legal route that people have. People have the legal route to move into these other countries as well and apply for asylum in Mexico. Central Americans have the legal right to move freely between Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. What the U.S. is asking other countries to do is to violate their already established international domestic laws. Now they come to the port of entry to apply for asylum. There's nothing illegal about that. That's what people are supposed to do.
Amapola, I'm going to give you a chance in a second, but I want to bring in Ivan.
That
Ivan,
is wrong.
Just a second, Amapola. I'm going to bring you in a second,
yes.
right? I want to bring in Ivan. Ivan, I want to ask you, is your country that weak? I mean, really, the United States, the global superpower, is it really true that there's this existential fear that 7,000 people are going to come and bust the border and invade and kind of destroy your country? Or are you all really being played during election season ahead of the midterms? The president's stoking anxieties, isn't he?
No, as a matter of fact, it's not 7, it's 17,000 at this point. That's what the estimate is. But here's the deal, right? Here's reality. Reality is, if these people are really seeking asylum and they're running away from this chaos, persecution, violence, whatever it is, they would go seek the nearest safe haven. Why wouldn't they go to Costa Rica? Why not seek asylum in Mexico? Why does it have to come to the United States? The United States cannot take the world's problems. We have always been open to legal immigration.
Ivan, why did your ancestors choose the United States?
We have been open to helping everybody.
Why did your family choose the U.S.? Why didn't they go to the country that was next door to where you came from? I mean, we didn't migrate through a caravan. Yeah.
We didn't come through the crash on the border. My family showed up through legal immigration, like millions of Americans have, and they went through a process and they got approved, and that's the way it works.
But who are you to decide they should go to Costa Rica and not the U.S.?
Of respect and a process.
Well, but who are you to decide? The point is, why shouldn't they have the right to go to the U.S. and apply? And whether the U.S. accepts them or not, that's up to your legal system.
They can apply wherever they want. Go to the embassy. Go to the embassy, like my parents did. Go to the embassy, apply for a visa, qualify, and travel freely. Absolutely.
Amapola,
that's the way it works. You can't just sit there and show up and say, I'm seeking asylum. Let me in.
Okay.
Here's a problem.
Okay.
These people have been coached. They understand that if they crash the border, they show up with children. They're going to be caught and they're going to be released because they can't separate the families.
Ivan, have you spoken to any of them?
What happens? 98% of those caught under that situation never show up to court.
Ivan, have you spoken to any of them?
Ever. So they're free and they're illegal in the country. It takes us 40.
Ivan, have you spoken to any of them?
What it takes us a year to deport, they come in 48 hours. So Ivan, imagine the exodus.
Ivan, you're just filibustering
Border Patrol says
Ivan,
that more or less we're. What?
Ivan, you're filibustering. Have you spoken to any of them? Do you know what they think? Do you know whether they've been coached?
I've talked to illegals my entire life.
You haven't spoken to anyone on the caravan?
No, I have not talked to anybody in the caravan.
Amapola, I want to bring in Amapola. She's been meaning to speak for a while. Amapola.
Yes. About reparations, the only people that America owed reparations to is the African American population, because they were brought in as slaves. In Latin America, we speak Spanish. The conquistadores were from Spain. They were not British. Why is it that people look at the United States of America as the villain or the, they haven't done anything but to send aid.
Okay, but this is a deeper question.
And they accept
this is a deeper question about
people.
This is a very deep. It's a deeper question about the very foundations of U.S. society, right? And I mean, I think many Native Americans would even dispute this, but that's a different discussion. Just as we wrap up here, Randolph, ahead of the midterms, if we look at President Trump at the very beginning.
Before you wrap up, could I say something? Could I say something?
Okay, go ahead.
Article 4, Section 4 of the United States of American Constitution says clearly that the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion. These people are invading the other countries, and they are
and for some other people,
their purpose is to invade America.
Yeah, that's a great point. Hold on. Mexico? Why don't they stay in Mexico?
Okay, and for some people, what takes precedence over that is give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, which is on the Statue of Liberty. Randolph, as I wrap up here, because I want to look at the contemporary politics as we wrap, looking ahead of the midterms, we saw President Trump, and you've been covering this closely, as a candidate, talking about we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. We saw the Muslim ban, the proposed Muslim ban, and then it got adjusted and changed. In the build-up halfway during the midterms, we have this now. What does it say about the tone of the presidency and what we can expect for the next 2 years?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, following President Trump, his campaign and his presidency, we're used to him using superlatives, using hyperbole, obviously saying things like Mexico is going to build the wall. There's been no proof, and there's been denial after denial. And even with the influx of illegal migration, often being measured by apprehensions at the border, arrests at the border, the numbers, if you go to the Customs and Border website, they're far, far lower. They were extraordinarily high in the year 2000, 2004 through 2006. They topped 1 million. Now, I think last year they were around 300,000. So if you look at it from a wide-angle view, it seems as though the number of illegal immigrants trying to get into the country is falling, and yet the rhetoric is ratcheting up, and right before campaign season. What I can say is that a number of Americans do seem to feel disenchanted with their politics. They look at Trump as, President Trump as a savior figure, and they don't seem to care that much about whether the statements he's making are factually accurate.
And the guy said there were criminals and unknown Middle Easterners when he was asked for evidence.
We like President Trump.
Certainly. But the president couldn't provide any evidence
that
there were criminals and Middle Easterners when he was asked. He said, I'm sure there could be evidence. You check it out for yourself.
You know, I can talk about the midterms if you want, and you look at the poll numbers right now. You look at mainstream media poll numbers. He's at 47%. He's higher than Obama was going into the 2010 elections.
Although that doesn't make him right.
Look at the numbers from Rasmussen. He's at 51%. The blue wave situation doesn't exist. We're going to pick up seats in the Senate. We're probably going to end up controlling the House or losing it by a few seats. So this blue wave situation is unreal.
Ivan and
Amapola. You look at the Harvard Marist numbers,
we're going to get you back on the show.
And he's taking 93% of the news that goes out.
I have other discussions to have on the show, so we're going to have you both back on the show. I promise. Amapola and Ivan, I hope you'll come back on the show. I'd appreciate that. Unfortunately, I have other issues to cover. Arturo, thank you as well. And Randolph.